Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is Rubidium. Today we are talking about collaboration, working with other people, how to best set up your projects so that you get what you want, everyone knows what's expected of them, and that you can build and foster productive, creative relationships over years that will serve you on many, many projects and will improve over time. I personally find working with other people one of the most difficult parts of filmmaking. Yes, technical issues exist, but usually with persistence and ingenuity, they can be solved. Weather and geography, they're set issues. The most swirly, unpredictable, changeable part of the filmmaking process is the human relationships that make it up. And you, as the writer, producer, director, whatever role you fill, when you have to work with other people, that is when things can not follow any logical progression. Things can be great one day, terrible the next. You never know what's going on in other people's lives. You never know what their full agenda is. There's just lots of unknowns. And it is also the richest vein to mine in filmmaking. Having a great actor bring a character to life in ways that you could never have imagined is one of the great delights of filmmaking as a director. Having a cinematographer or a producer suggest something from their experience and solve a problem that would have taken you hours just because they've been through it before multiplies your experience by so much. And having other people with you to kind of carry the load of the creative filmmaking process, which can be, multiple years long, and really is the thing that really tests you, is like whether or not you can stick with this project over all of the trials and tribulations through it, is really the measure of whether or not a film succeeds or fails, whether your career succeeds or fails. And it is so much greater to have someone else there rooting for you, sharing that burden, making jokes, helping you through it, going through it together, than it is going through it alone. So collaboration is the most fraught and the most fruitful of elements in the filmmaking experience. I have definitely, as technology has got better, I've definitely seen myself look for ways to work with fewer and fewer people. I don't think the dream of the solo filmmaker will ever manifest, I guess, unless you want to use AI. But I think that having as few people as possible is a good start, because, when you have two people, you have one relationship. When you have three people, you now have 5 relationships. When you have 4 people, you now have, it goes on bigger and bigger and bigger. So the more people you have, the greater chances that there's going to be a bad connection there, and it threatens to derail the entire process. So in this process, I'm going to just share some of the things of 25 plus years of filmmaking that I've learned, and the strategies that I use to both get the best from other people and to sort of bulletproof your project against the dangers of other people. So you want to minimize, in game theory, they call it mini-max. You want to minimize the maximum thing that can go wrong. I think when I started filmmaking, and I never started as a crew position. I was always the filmmaker and had to try and get other people to help me on my projects. That's just me. A lot of really successful filmmakers come through the ranks as different things. I personally never did. I made films when I was 14, made films when I was 20, and then I slowly got more and more people involved. But some of the things that I've learned is you want to have everyone's agenda aligned. You want everyone to be working towards the same outcome, which is the best film possible. The worst scenarios that I've seen on film sets, particularly TV commercials that I worked on, was where the cinematographer thought they'd been hired to deliver something to the ad agency, and the director thought they'd been hired to deliver something else to the agency, to the client. And so on set, the two, the director and the cinematographer, who's meant to be, his or her chief ally, were actually working at cross purposes. One was trying to deliver something that looked a certain way and had a certain, had their fingerprints all over it. Like they thought they'd been hired to give the ad their touch. The other one had thought they'd been hired to give the ad their touch. So then you just have these two people at loggerheads while the rest of the cast and crew and production waits around for them to argue and, like fight over territory and control and all these things. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. So the way that is solved is when the director should be the person hiring all the department heads, and they should say, okay, here's the project, here's the amount of money that we have to achieve the project, this is what we're trying to achieve. And you get buy-in, you get the person getting involved because they are interested in achieving the director's agenda. They're not bringing their own agenda to the project, which can be really, really toxic. Sometimes the lead actor, though this is, in my experience, less often because I haven't worked with like stars, there's plenty of stories that come out of Hollywood where the director just gets hired to be the director and the film is really the lead actor's film. And so the lead actor has a agenda and the director is trying not to get fired. I mean, there's crazy stories, there's certain stars that come up time and time again of like, they feel like my character wouldn't do that, even though the director's set up the whole shot and everyone's lit it and rigged it and got ready all night to do this particular thing. And then the actor arrives and says, no, my character wouldn't do that. And they've been given the power by the studio to say no, whereas really they should have bought into the director's vision and have been hired by the director to get it done. So the star system creates those same crossed agendas where the actor wants their character. They're not there to make the director's film. They're there to not make their film, but protect their image. Like they don't want, this scene where their character kisses a different person, because they don't want their brand to be associated with that. Things like that. That's a real example of a very famous actor who, gets other actors, kicked off this film because they feel like their character wouldn't do that, and only happens last minute. So you really want everyone fighting for the same outcome. You don't want just yes men and yes women. You don't want what's it called? Vindictive obedience. I think there's another name for that. I'll look it up and put it on the screen. Malicious compliance. You don't want malicious compliance, which is when you say, hey, I want to shoot from this angle in this way, and the cinematographer's like, okay, and then spends all the time setting up the shot, you lose hours, and then realizes that when the actor gets out of the car, you're just shooting into a blank wall and it looks terrible. And, the DP is now like, well, this is what you asked for. And they didn't voice their objection because they were just going along with whatever you wanted. You don't want that. You want someone who's going to be like, okay, they're going to use their technical knowledge, which is why you're hiring them. And this goes for every department, art department, sound, catering, whatever it is. You want the person to be using their wealth of experience and their knowledge of all the things that have gone wrong and the problems they've solved to help bring your vision to life. So if you say, oh, I want to look this way, the DP can be, well, if we do that, we're going to see this, and it's going to look really flat. What if we moved it this direction or this direction? You want people that are not going to follow the letter of your direction, but the spirit of your direction. You should already had these meetings where you've talked to them about what you're trying to achieve, and they're going to want to achieve the same thing. So they're able to work with you and provide solutions and foresight and protection against moving away from what you're trying to actually do, even if that's what you ask them. That's what I look forward in a collaborator, someone who is totally agreed to achieve the vision that I'm looking for, that I personally came up with, not their own vision, and who's humble enough to say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and who's brave enough to say, I don't think that's going to work for these reasons, and they have a solution that's workable. Like, oh, it'll save us hours in setup, tons of lights, heaps of manpower if we just do it in this direction, or like bounce the light off this wall, or what light from outside, or do this at night. Another place where I've seen real problems emanate is when you make plans to do a project with someone when all of your experience is in a different type of project. And coming from my world, you work with someone on TV commercials where they're getting paid $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a day. They're only working one day, maybe a prep day as well. So they're getting paid really, really well. You guys love working together. There's very little pressure. You've got 8, 10, 12 hours and plenty of money to achieve 4 shots. And you work together great, you collaborate well. Then you say, hey, I'm shooting my first feature, and the cinematographer's like, oh, I'd love to do your feature with you. I definitely owe you that. You've got me all this work. And suddenly you're saying, oh, I want to, go out to the desert or the jungle for 2 months, and I'll be paying you $100 a day. You'll be working with almost no crew. You won't have time to set up the shots that you're used to setting up. You'll have one light, one assistant, and we will barely be sleeping. We'll be eating terrible food. When it's easy to say in the comfort of the office, oh yeah, I'm down for that. This is what I joined the business for. I can't wait to work on this film with you. When you get there and the incentives are totally different, right? The person's no longer comfortable, no longer getting paid well, no longer close to home. They may then expect to be paid with much more control of the film. And I've seen this, so it's almost a cliche on the first feature of working with a cinematographer in nice places. Then you go and do something hard for very little money. The cinematographer is expecting to get paid by being able to put their stamp on the film. And they're not taking a massive pay cut and going way out of their way to make a film that in their mind is going to look terrible. But if you're going from shooting 30 seconds in 10 hours to shooting 10 pages or 10 minutes, 20 minutes in one day, with no money, there's no way their cinematography is going to look as polished, as professional as it will on a commercial. In fact, a lot of it is going to look pretty flat and rushed and terrible and low budget, because it will be. Then the cinematographer thinks, well, what am I even doing here? Like, why have I turned down all these other jobs? Why have I made all these sacrifices when this film isn't going to get me anything because it's looked bad? That has destroyed so many director-cinematographer relationships. You're looking for the cinematographer that says, I know that this is going to look terrible, that it's going to look terrible compared to a TV commercial, but I'm not going to try and light and shoot your 90-minute feature like a TV commercial. I'm going to try and shoot it like an indie feature. And there are plenty of low-budget indie features that they don't look commercials. They look like low-budget indie features, and they look great. They look, they serve the story. See, on TV commercials, the cinematography, you don't have a story. You're selling batteries and toy cars and, diet drinks. So the cinematography is the only thing that's impressive about these. Whereas on an indie film, the story and the characters and the acting has to take center stage. The cinematography has to sort of serve that. And not as many cinematographers are comfortable with that. They think they want to look like, Roger Deakins on a, $100 million, $200 million Blade Runner budget. That's who they admire. That's who they want to emulate. And you can't do it. You need to say, oh, I'm going to make this look like not Greg Fraser, the Batman, but Greg Fraser, Lion, which, was a much smaller, much more indie film. Still a great film. Still got nominated for Best Cinematography, but in a vastly different way. So the only thing you can do to overcome these difficulties before they become problems is communicate. And if you need to, shoot a small part of the film, small part of the project, just a couple days in with the style, the budget, the camera, the gear, the crew that you're going to be shooting the larger feature with as a test. I shot this. I did something like this with Brooklyn Tide. I shot one scene as a proof of concept with the actors in the neighborhood, with the crew, the three people that were the crew, that allowed me to sort of test out like a proof of concept. It probably won't be a scene in the movie unless you have a whole separate part of the film that, is a flashback or a cutaway, which is a great way to test as well. But you learn a lot about the people involved when you're doing this sort of thing, and you can see if they really are in for what you're describing as far as the hours, the difficulty, the aesthetic, because that's where things usually break down. And that's where, again, you get your agendas crossing. One of them is like, well, I'm here, I'm making all these sacrifices to make a film that's going to advance my career. That's a false reality. The only thing that is going to advance a cinematographer or an actor or an art director's career is a film that's successful. And the film can only be successful when everyone serves the film and not their own department or their own agenda. So yeah, that can be really critical to get the right people there for the right reason. And that sets you up for success. Not just the best you can get, because the best you can get will come with all their own, all their own baggage, all their own agendas. Another alternative to this is something that I saw on I think it was the She Rigs podcast, where they talked about if you're going to shoot a feature, so the typical, 18 days indie feature, 3 6-day weeks idea, get your cast and crew together, shoot 2 days on a scene and a location, then take a week off to fine-tune what you've learned on those 2 days, and then shoot the rest of the film. Because you'll learn straight away, the focus puller who came highly recommended but can't pull focus. You'll find the producer or first AD or whoever it is who, shows up 2 hours late and then wants to smoke cigarettes with the actors instead of actually producing the film. You'll find the actor who gives the same performance no matter how much direction they get. They've locked into that particular choice. And if you start your 3 6-day weeks with those people, you only have like the Sunday after the first week to change them up, and it's never enough time because you'll just be recovering. You really want to run the machine before you get in the race. So that is one side of the coin. That is how you get the right people for the right reasons doing the right thing. The other side of the coin is that truly unique people, and I think this falls very heavily on the side of talent, meaning people in front of the camera, actors. Sometimes they're not easy to manage because they're emotions live so close to the surface. They are sometimes great actors, not all. There's not a rule, but sometimes great actors are difficult people. They may have a lot of emotional baggage. They may be incredibly set doing things their way. They may be incredibly argumentative. They may be unreliable. And if you exclude those people from your projects just on the professionalism basis, you may be losing out on sometimes the greatest resource. The person I'm thinking about is like the prince. The person I'm thinking of when I'm talking about this is Klaus Kinski and his relationship with Werner Herzog over 6 movies in 30 years. He was, you can't really put too fine a point on it. He was mentally unstable, and probably, should have been would have been needed to be medicated or even committed to live a safe and happy life. But this man was, super passionate, unstable, and yet he made a film that would have been largely forgotten into a masterpiece because you can feel through the screen how raw his emotions were. He was clearly using acting as a sort of a medication. He was using acting to deal with his demons, whatever they were. And it was a great service to the world to be able, that Werner Herzog could put up with his problems and capture those to make the incredible movies that he did. Sometimes you need that unhinged energy on screen to elevate a project from, a regular everyday story to something much greater. There's a documentary that Werner Herzog made called My Favorite Fiend or My Best Fiend about Klaus Kinski, and sort of, discusses his problems with, his most famous collaborator over the years that they worked together. And, he threatened to shoot him. They threatened to kill each other. I would not wish that. That's certainly not my destiny. I could not work with someone so problematic. But I think that if you only limit yourself to like people that show up on time, know their lines, give you their full attention and make the choices that you ask them to make, I think you are severely limiting the people that you could potentially work with and that could breathe life into your stories. And again, I'm not saying by no means that this is everyone. There are incredible actors that are incredibly professional, but there are a lot of actors who struggle with their demons, and that they wear those demons on their sleeve, and they can bring an extraordinary amount of energy and truth and passion to a project. And the question you have to ask yourself is like, can I manage this crazy? Do the scales balance? Can I get from this person what I need and offset the parts of them that are going to be problematic? It comes down to the individual choice, but it also comes down to your planning as a filmmaker. Can you work in a way where, this person, if they bring so much to the film, if their character is so amazing, can you convince them that the film serves their interests as well, make them motivated to do the film and make it come true, and have enough wiggle room in your budget and your schedule that if this person doesn't show up to set when they're supposed to, it doesn't sink your movie. Because honestly, I'm thinking of Devil's Fortune and Brooklyn Tide, my feature films, I had no wiggle room at all. If the actors hadn't been as fantastic as they were, if they hadn't showed up on time, ready, off book, and super on point, my film would have been sunk. But there are other films out there that, there are other projects out there that I would definitely consider doing in a more free-form fashion if I could get the right person and I could adapt my project around their idiosyncrasies if I needed to. So that's the other side of the coin. It's far more controversial. It's probably, we're dealing now with like the advanced filmmaking. These people don't really work well in Hollywood because, Hollywood is, run by corporations. Corporations don't accept this. I'm thinking of Christopher Doyle as a cinematographer, clearly talented, clearly, brilliant, brought so much to so many of Wong Kar-wai's films. And Wong Kar-wai, maybe because he was just starting out, had a way to manage him, but when and outside of that system, it all sort of fell apart. He was just too unpredictable, too crazy, too wild to work within that Hollywood system. And I think his work suffered. But, we still have all the films they made together and the amount of energy that he brought to those early movies like Fallen Angels and Chungking Express, and I guess half of In the Mood for Love, were amazing. Like he said that he believed that the primary relationship on the film is between the camera operator and the actor on camera. So he sort of brought an energy while he was operating to sort of project or bond or become this audience he was the first audience for the actor. That is a vastly different dynamic to when a camera operator is like just thinking about what he wants to have for lunch. They have the camera on their shoulder or they're pressing return and just staring at the screen and they're like, they've got nothing invested. They don't care about the actor's performance. They don't really care about the film. It's just a job to them. The difference between that and someone who's passionately listening and witnessing an actor's performance makes a world of difference, I think, to the film and the actors, what the actor does in front of the camera. So yeah, you have to, know what you're getting into when you work with difficult people, but also understand that sometimes difficult people are difficult because they care so much or they bring so much, and you need to offset that and make an informed decision about the film that you want to make. Having said that, I did try to make a film with someone who wasn't super reliable, and we got about 5 days into the film, and then they disappeared, never to be seen again. They're okay. I still follow them on Instagram. They're not dead, but never even got an explanation why they stopped replying to my texts and calls and didn't want to be in the project anymore. So I've been burnt, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because you want to find the right person for the right project, and you want to write and create that project around what makes them special, rather than trying to fit a unique and incredible character into that mold. Like Klaus Kinski never could have played the straight corporate villain. He had to chew the scenery and like bleed onto the screen. So there's some things about collaboration, working with other people. Ultimately, the only way you do that is by collaborating. You got to be shooting all the time. I say this almost every podcast now. Get out there, shoot something, even the dumbest thing ever. Shoot a pretend TV commercial for, energy drinks, whatever it is. You're only getting better. You're only making more connections. You're only learning about people. You're only refining your craft and your storytelling if you're telling stories, if you're creating films. So don't let your films die inside you. Don't let your stories die without finding a voice. Find a way to bring them into the world. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.